It's Wednesday, November 11th, 2009, Veterans Day, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Bell.
Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your normal daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com.
Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. As far as the audio quality for today goes, I am coming to you from the hotel room in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I'm staying during the Drug Policy Alliance's conference. This is the international conference they have every 2 years, and it's taking place Thursday through Saturday. Today, the folks for DPA had an all-staff retreat, and I was honored to give my presentation from the NORML conference, the Zeitgeist of Legalization, which is a PowerPoint presentation I presented in San Francisco this year, to all of these staff members from DPA. And it seemed to go over really well. We did a half-hour presentation, and they seemed to really enjoy the slides. And then there were some questions and answers at the end. They were asking me questions about marijuana legalization, and I gave them my best responses. So big thanks to Dr. Ethan Nadelman from DPA, and Stephen Gutwillig, and Derek Hodes, and all the people who are making my trip here so enjoyable. Albuquerque is beautiful. I've got a whole bunch of photos that I've set up to my Twitter account. You can check them out at twitter.com/radicalruss and just click the links and you'll be able to see the photos. Also, I'm very proud to announce the formation of a brand new NORML chapter, Beverly Hills NORML 90210. You can check them out at norml90210.org. It's being headed up by Cheryl Schumann. She's the executive director and founder. She's got over 2 decades of experience in the entertainment industry and a Rolodex full of contacts among celebrities and movers and shakers in Hollywood that make me very excited for some of the possible public relations we'll have in the future from Beverly Hills NORML. Now, coming up on your daily audio stash today, we'll begin with your cannabis community calendar, and then it's a look at our hemp headlines, including the stunning announcement from the American Medical Association reversing their stand on the medical efficacy of cannabis. We have a terrible story about, once again, cops using people as confidential informants, but this time it's a non-drug user who got caught in the web. And from celebrity news, the British singer Joss Stone comes out and tells the whole world that she's a cannabis smoker, along with some controversial remarks as well. For our daily Toker Tunes, today is Irie Wednesday, and Cannabis Carey brings us a song today by Prophet Benjamin called Field of Weed. And it's time for our Cannabis Science segment like we do every Wednesday. Dr. Mitch Earlywine will be joining us to talk about the American Medical Association's announcement and contrasting that with the sacking of the British drugs advisor David Nutt and the resignations of more drugs advisors in the wake of his firing. All that and more coming up on your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Roll me something fat and long, or pack me a bowl, or fill me a bomb. It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. It's 420 somewhere.
It's time for your Cannabis Community Calendar, available online at normal.org/calendar. To get your events added to the calendar, send me an email with the subject Calendar Request to stash@normal.org.
Let's take a look at your Cannabis Community Calendar, which you can find at normal.org/calendar. The members of Miami Valley NORML near Dayton, Ohio will be meeting at Borders to socialize, drink coffee, have snacks, and play the increasingly popular weed card game. This will be a fun way to get to know each other and to organize for marijuana law reform in the Miami Valley. On Friday, November 13th, Oregon NORML is featuring its grand opening of the Cannabis Cafe, the first of its kind in the nation, we understand, at the 700 Northeast Deacom location where they hold their cardholder meetings. The local Oregon media has been all over this, and it turns out also we're going to get some coverage from Reason Magazine and the USA Today. This is open only to medical marijuana cardholders and members of Oregon NORML. And coming up on Saturday night, we'll be broadcasting live with NORML Show Live from the Cannabis Cafe. So make sure to tune in Saturday night, 6 p.m. Pacific at live.normal.org. Also coming up on Saturday, Oregon NORML's having its regular cardholders meeting at the Village Ballroom, 700 Northeast Deacom. You must be a medical marijuana cardholder to attend. And on Saturday, NORML of Waco, Texas is having their monthly members meeting at Smokin' Ray's in Waco, Texas. Coming around the weekend to next week, on Monday, November 16th, Kansas City NORML is having their meeting in Kansas City, and there will be a drug policy reform discussion with Professor Mike Whitty at the University of Michigan, hosted by the Students for Sensible Drug Policy and Michigan NORML. For more information on all of these events, including dates, times, maps, and contact information and more, check out the calendar at normal.org/calendar. And if you'd like your events to be read on the Cannabis Community Calendar and featured on NORML's website, send me an email at stash@normal.org.
It's a NORML shout-out.
Our shout-out today goes to the state of California, the center of marijuana law reform in this country. A lot of folks might think that there's no work that needs to be done since California has dispensaries all over the place and such acceptance of marijuana, but that's exactly the place where we need the most work to be done. We need to have more NORML chapters in the state of California. Just like I have a 50-state strategy for a NORML chapter in every state, with California, I have a strategy to put a chapter at least in every county in California, maybe 2 or 3 in some of the larger metro areas. We need to have more representation in the Golden State, and if you'd like to get started forming a chapter in your area of California, send me an email at stash@normal.org.
If I were to tell you that in America, right now, over 1 million children sell marijuana, what would you think? Would you think that any public policy that creates over 1 million teenage marijuana dealers needs to be re-examined and possibly amended? You would not be alone. The members of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka NORML, have been working since 1970 to reform marijuana laws such that responsible adults, not children, sell and use marijuana. Isn't it high time to reform America's misguided marijuana laws? This is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML in Washington, D.C. Only concerned citizens can effectively end the federal government's nearly 70-year-old prohibition on responsible adult marijuana sales and use. Want to know more about how you can help? Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's popular and informative webpage at NORML, NORML.org.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML daily audio stash, Hemp Headlines.
American Medical Association finally recognizes marijuana as medicine and urges rescheduling. Houston, Texas. The American Medical Association, or AMA, voted today to reverse its long-held position that marijuana be retained as a Schedule I substance with no medical value. The AMA adopted a report drafted by its Council on Science and Public Health entitled Use of Cannabis for Medicinal Purposes, which affirmed the therapeutic benefits of marijuana and called for further research. The report concluded that, quote, short-term controlled trials indicate that smoked cannabis reduces neuropathic pain, improves appetite and caloric intake, especially in patients with reduced muscle mass, and may relieve spasticity and pain in patients with multiple sclerosis, end quote. Furthermore, the report urges that, quote, the Schedule I status of marijuana be reviewed with the goal of facilitating clinical research and development of cannabinoid-based medicines and alternate delivery methods, end quote. The change of position by the largest physician-based group in the country was precipitated in part by a resolution adopted in June of 2008 by the medical student section of the AMA in support of the reclassification of marijuana status as a Schedule I substance. In the past, the AMA has considered 3 resolutions dealing with medical marijuana, which also helped to influence the report and its recommendations. The AMA vote on the report took place in Houston, Texas, during the organization's annual interim meeting of the House of Delegates. The last AMA position, adopted 8 years ago, called for maintaining marijuana as a Schedule I substance with no medical value. The AMA's about-face on medical marijuana follows an announcement by the Obama administration in October discouraging U.S. attorneys from taking enforcement actions in medical marijuana states. In February 2008, a similar resolution was adopted by the American College of Physicians, the country's second-largest physician group and the largest organization of doctors of internal medicine. The ACP resolution called for an evidence-based review of marijuana's status as a Schedule I controlled substance to determine whether it should be reclassified to a different schedule. So, does this mean we get a change of heart from Representative John Boozman, Representative Dennis Cardoza, House Minority Leader John Boehner, and all the other politicians on pot who rely on the old excuse that the American Medical Association says that crude marijuana is not medicine? Not really. We just received a note from the Office of National Drug Control Policy. Their statement is now relying on the FDA not approving a crude plant for medical use. So more excuses coming from the government. But nonetheless, this is huge. An entire plank on the war on certain American citizens using non-pharmaceutical, non-alcoholic, tobacco-free drugs has just crashed and burned. Resistance to medical marijuana from roadblocks, governors like John Lynch, Tim Pawlenty, and Jody Rell in New Hampshire, Minnesota, and Connecticut will be more difficult now that nobody can deny that smoked cannabis is medicine. It's a lot harder politically to veto medicine. Rescheduling will be interesting. Marinol, a pure 100% not your father's Woodstock weed dose of THC, was originally entered as Schedule II, but was then moved down to Schedule III. So how do you rate cannabis as any more dangerous than dronabinol pills? Does cannabis end up in Schedule III, like anabolic steroids and ketamine? Or does it end up in Schedule IV with Ambien, Xanax, Valium, and roofies? Police coercing non-drug-using citizens into working as drug snitches. From the Buffalo News. Bianca Hervey, a 20-year-old college student, was returning home to her apartment in Attica when a village police officer drove up behind her, put on his flashing lights, and pulled her over. Hervey's driver's license, Officer Christopher Graham told her, had been suspended for failing to pay traffic tickets. He arrested her. Graham handcuffed her, put her in the back of the police cruiser, and took her to police headquarters. Her car was impounded and towed away. At the police station, Graham handcuffed Hervey to a bench and told her she would probably spend the night in jail, Hervey said. But then Graham offered her a way out of her problems. Become a confidential informant for the Wyoming County Drug Task Force, he told her, and he could make the charges disappear. Police departments throughout the country use people arrested on drug charges to inform on others. In return, their charges are reduced or dismissed. But Hervey said she doesn't use drugs, and having just moved from Batavia to the tiny village of Attica, doesn't know anyone in Attica who does. That didn't stop her recruitment as a confidential informant. Neither Wyoming County Sheriff Ferris Hyman nor District Attorney Gerald Stout has a problem with how Smith's department handled the case. Asked about recruiting someone who said she is not part of the drug trade, Stout responded to the news, quote, "But she agreed to do it," end quote. Nothing more aptly demonstrates the idiocy of prohibition than a system of law enforcement and justice that uses young people as bait. Surely nobody in the close-knit group of drug users in the tiny town of Attica, New York, is going to think twice about the new girl in town who is so desperate to buy a large amount of cocaine or pills or weed, but doesn't seem to know which end of a joint to light. This is even more shameful than the Rachel Hoffman case. At least Rachel was someone who hung around with a cannabis and ecstasy-using crowd. This Bianca Hervey sounds like the majority of young people who, believe it or not, don't do any drugs. When police infiltrate criminal organizations, they've had months of training. So why do they think they can take a young lady who doesn't pay traffic tickets and turn her into super cop? Joss Stone, quote, "I'm a stoner, drugs are fun," end quote. From Celebrity Health and Fitness. Joss Stone, the UK singer who rose to fame at 16 because of her sultry, blues-inflected voice, is determined to live a rock star life. She openly admits she smokes marijuana and says she is likely to, quote, "dabble" in other illegal drugs because they look like, quote, "fun." Is she high or just crazy? Stone said cannabis is less harmful than alcohol, and while she acknowledged that drugs are horrible, she said they also sound like, quote, "fun." Quote, "I might dabble now and then," she declared. "I smoke cannabis, but I don't think it's really a drug. It's more of an herb. I don't regret saying that at all," end quote. First of all, if you haven't heard Joss Stone sing, do yourself a favor and find one of her tracks. I first heard her when she was hitting at age 16, but it wasn't until I saw her on Austin City Limits with Michael McDonald that I realized she wasn't an African-American woman singing in an old black church's choir since the age of 3 like I'd suspected, but she was some white teenage British girl. Now I have even more reason to like her. Plus, let's not get too outraged over her saying that she might dabble with drugs. She's just telling one of the secrets about hard drugs they never tell you in school. They are fun. Why do you think people take them? There are people who have taken all manner of drugs, enjoyed their experiences, and didn't become addicts. Then again, there are people who have also played Russian roulette and not shot themselves in the skull. Drugs themselves aren't bad. To quote Clapton, "It's in the way that you use it." Now, some will read this and think I'm encouraging hard drug use. Nope. Neither encouraging nor discouraging. I'm just telling it like it is. Drugs are fun until they stop becoming fun anymore. That's why I prefer cannabis. 19 years with Mary Jane, and she's still fun.
It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might